arriving in U.S. mail from St. Louis in the original de Havilland DH-4 biplane in 10 bulky gunny sacks are the combined audiobook renditions and supplemental background information as presented in podcast form by moi, me, Robert P. Fitton. Good evening to one and all, wherever in the galaxy you make your home. This just in, Patch Kincaid meets in Miami with top La Cosa Nostra leaders from around the United States. Most readers of the Kennedy Paradox may wince at Patch's meeting with organized crime. Okay, I get it. Here's the thing. These guys have been trying to kill Castro with no success. While they disregard Patch's time travel story, they take the threat of Sanchez killing them very seriously. They also know that Patch wants Sanchez dead. That's the key. They can easily get him into Cuba. Patch will do the rest. It is in this meeting with the mob that we first see one of the prime movers in the JFK assassination, Johnny Rosselli. But first, Patch and Meinkewitz have to travel to Miami. Another player in the JFK assassination will drive them along the Gulf of Mexico to Miami. As Part 7 begins, let's get on the road to Miami with Jack LaRue and take the play away. Chapter 24, The Town and Country Motel, New Orleans, Louisiana, April 2nd, 1961, 10:11 a.m. Meinkewitz, smoking a Cuban cigar, stood with Patch under the Town and Country Motel's canopy. The cars and trucks approached, repeating the Doppler effect as the sound faded down the highway out front. Inside the lobby, an animated Easterly chatted with the counter clerk. He had flown them all night from Guatemala and landed the plane at a private airfield not too far from the motel. How do I find Carlos Sánchez? Meinkewitz puffed on the cigar. I was briefed on what this was all about. Dietrich told me they all fear what you said about Carlos going after La Cosa Nostra leaders is about to happen. I'm more concerned about killing him. So are the targets. The mob? Asked Patch as the door opened behind the counter clerk. A diminutive man with trim gray hair and a dark suit and tie moved around the counter and escorted Easterly to the side table. Speaking of which, I do believe that gentleman is Carlos Marcello, a very, very powerful man. The Kennedys do not like Marcello. Easterly leaned toward Marcello as both men engaged in a protracted conversation. I could use some chow. Listen up, Patch. Marcello's in big trouble with the Justice Department. Hell, he's been under pressure ever since the McClellan Committee in the 50s. As Dietrich would say, Big Kennedy and Little Kennedy worked on that committee. Patch folded his arms and leaned against a 1961 aqua-colored Chevy convertible with a white top. Yet Carlos Marcello is alive and well, Ray. Must have a good lawyer. Frank Regano, wearing his gray suit at the Flamingo Lounge, came into Patch's thoughts. They have top-notch legal teams. I don't know why we deal with these people anyway. I don't trust any of them. They could turn on you, my friend, in a second. We're dealing with Marcello to get Castro. At the same time, the Justice Department is going after him? That's just plain stupid. Meinkewitz spoke with the cigar between his incisors. My point exactly. The lobby door opened, and Easterly, a piece of toast in his hand, emerged under the canopy. Gentlemen, Mr. Marcello is aware and appreciative that you have fingered Carlos Sánchez. Mr. Marcello remembers his friends. So what happens to us? Asked Meinkewitz. You'll be picked up shortly by Guy Bannister. Don't piss him off. Guy will bring you downtown for the next leg of your journey. And where is that? Don't have that information. Meinkewitz removed his cigar. Who is sending us? Easterly bit into the toast. Raymond. This is not to reason why. Yeah, when I join the Light Brigade, I'll remember that, Harold. Easterly tilted his head back and laughed. Well, we'll see about that. Harold, thanks for getting us out of camp, said Patch. My pleasure, boys, he said, finishing the toast. Then he removed a crisp yellow card with the banner Investigations on top. He handed the card to Meinkewitz and bolted from the canopy to the parking lot. "You guys take care now." Patch studied the card. "This man Bannister is a private investigator." "I think he worked for the FBI," said Meinkewitz, the cigar hanging from the corner of his mouth. 434 Balter Building, New Orleans. Guy Bannister, president. "Magnolia 4532. Meinkewitz looked up. "I need to call Bob Dietrich. I don't like the way this is going. Too many unknowns." Patch smiled a wide smile. "And he does personality analysis. Whoop-de-doo. Lot of cozy relationships, Patch. Real cozy." Driving down the side streets, New Orleans, Louisiana, April 2nd, 1961, 11:30 a.m. Guy Bannister, lingering at retirement age, had gray hair pushed straight back and possessed a self-importance as immense as his hatred of Castro. He kept telling Patch to behave himself. He drove his blue Ford easily as he navigated over the Huey P. Long Bridge and then into the city's back alleys. "We're gonna kill that prick so dead that Khrushchev will feel it." "You have an office, it says on your card," said Meinkewitz. "Yeah, I have 2 rooms on the first floor across from the Masonic Temple. We may move, who knows?" Patch leaned against the front seat. "Just where are we going, Mr. Bannister?" Bannister looked in the mirror. "Don't worry about it." "Everybody has a bit of information," said Patch. "Somebody must have put the whole puzzle together." Bannister shook his head as he turned the corner. "Don't count on that either, son. The more you know, the more you don't want to know." He said nothing as he drove toward a huge body of water east of the city. "Lake Pontchartrain is away from your office, Guy," said Meinkewitz. Bannister removed a pearl-handled revolver and fanned it toward the back seat. "You'd best shut your mouth." Black Lincoln moved slowly on the grass and stopped near some palm trees less than 100 yards from the water. Bannister skidded onto the grass. "This is the end of the line, Ray. Both of you out of the car." "What's going on?" "Shut up." Patch stepped outside and joined Meinkewitz on the grass. The Lincoln's driver's door opened as Bannister's blue Ford spun onto the asphalt. A dark-haired man with a square-faced jaw and a penciled mustache emerged from the car. He wore a lightweight jacket, had a Cuban accent, and carried a little black .38. "What's the deal?" asked Meinkewitz. "The deal, my friend, is you're going on vacation." He started the Lincoln and drove the car, waving the gun as he spoke along the lake. Patch sat on the outside, Meinkewitz in the middle. "If you're going to kill us, then just get it over with." "Kill you? You're much too valuable to be killed. No one knows who the hell you are. As for me, well, Fidel has a price on the head of Arthur Smith." "Nah, your name sounds damn familiar," said Meinkewitz. "It should. Carlos Marcello is my friend. He promised me American dollars if I give him gambling concessions once we take the country back. Right now, I'm the leader of the Cuban Reclamation Army." Patch wondered what the title inferred and why this guy didn't wear a uniform. "Where are we going?" "Ah, you vacation. You're going to Miami with Mr. LaRue." "Who?" "Not who, LaRue. He needs to make a delivery, and you are part of that delivery." "To whom?" "That is information I cannot reveal. However, should either of you tell me why Carlos Sánchez is going to kill members of organized crime..." "Ever think that Fidel doesn't want them running their operation back in Cuba?" asked Patch. "That goes without saying. Where's the traitor?" "Fidel?" asked Patch. Arthur Smith laughed heartily enough to lower the gun for a second. Then his face hardened and he took aim again. "Where is he?" "We don't know that." "What, do you think I'm some kind of fool? I worked for Batista in Havana. I am dedicated to killing Fidel Castro. You will gain nothing, especially in Florida, if you don't tell us where Carlos is now. I'm sure when Carlos wants to make himself known, Mr. Arthur Smith, even you will be told." Chapter 25. Old Spanish Trail, Slidell, Louisiana, 12:45 p.m., April 2nd, 1961. A stocky guy with a receding hairline stepped out of a laundry truck stamped clean towels and linen service, positioned on the grassy shoulder off the highway. He wore an open white shirt and dark pants. Smith shook hands with him and they talked for a few minutes behind the truck. Several times Smith pointed toward Meinkewitz and Patch inside the Lincoln. Then he returned to the car as the guy stood outside the truck. "Okay, my friends, Mr. LaRue is ready to drive you to Miami." "Wonderful." They walked slowly up to the truck, dented as if someone had been pitching a baseball into the fender for a full 9-inning game. The back doors were locked with a padlock. "What's the big secret?" asked Patch. LaRue interrupted as if someone had thrown a crazy switch at a distant control panel. "You come out of nowhere, and you ask me what the hell I'm doing?" "Just a question." He removed a wood-grain revolver. "You do the telling, I ask the questions. What's in the truck is my business, Patchy." Meinkewitz rolled his eyes. "I want to speak with Bob Dietrich in Washington." "And I want to call Jack and Bobby Kennedy. Now get in the truck." This time Patch squeezed between LaRue and Meinkewitz. The vinyl seats were dusty like the metal dash. Green and white cans of Quaker State motor oil were strewn amidst a repair slip for some garage in Houma, Louisiana. LaRue started the truck. Exhaust filtered through the cab. LaRue looked like a little kid holding the huge steering wheel. "Just remember one thing." "Now, what's that?" "You take the play away. You just remember to keep your mouth shut from what you see. Keeping your mouth shut can keep you alive, Mr. Meinkewitz. I got broads who con me, and I got these exile bastards who con me." "What do you mean?" "Let me tell you, Patchy. You gotta look out for number one, because these pricks out here, they're gonna take you down." "I'll remember that. You making fun of me?" "Who, me? Come on, Jack." LaRue nodded and Patch winced at Meinkewitz. Meinkewitz grinned and looked out the side window. "Let me tell you another thing. Trafficante is no slouch. You better impress him. You got other big-time individuals who will meet and talk to you. Just friggin' level with them. No bullshit. You fuck with them and shit, they'll take you out. Capiche? Why do we need to talk to these men at all?" "Cut the crap. Everyone knows you said this Sánchez traitor was sent by Castro and his G2 to take out Rosselli or Giancana. Could even be Marcello. Marcello's got his own troubles with the INS. Deportation. No shit, Sherlock. You can't threaten important men like that. They have people looking for Sánchez right now. He's a dead man." "Well, that's good news," said Patch. "Yeah, well, I don't know how much the contract's worth. If they don't get him right away, the price will go up." "I have a question," said Patch. "Questions cost money, Patch." "My fiancée, Kate Landers. Is she alive?" LaRue shook his head as he drove. "I got no answers." Hotel Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, Miami, Florida. April 2nd, 1961, 3:11 p.m. Like a ripe banana in a fresh fruit bowl, LaRue drove the sputtering laundry truck along a palm-lined divided highway below Miami Beach's high-rise buildings to the east. Patch had sensed the salty air minutes before they reached the shore. A linear waterway with slow-moving little boats followed the road. Patch had just asked LaRue about the road leading to Key-Biscayne, and LaRue told him to shut up. Patch nudged Meinkewitz. "Full circle back to Miami. Shall I call Ike for tea time on Key-Biscayne, Ray?" "As long as you keep the president out of sand traps," said Meinkewitz, laughing. Hey, no happy hush yet. Hotel Fontainebleau is a classy place." "What's the matter, Jack? Don't they laugh at the Fontainebleau?" The massive hotel, connected by a one-story structure to a second rectangular building, curved toward the road. "Sinatra played the Fontainebleau last month, for Christ's sakes." "Is that right?" said Meinkewitz. "I like Sinatra." "I did it my way," sang Patch. "Look, Patchy, you're not going to do it your way, because they don't give a shit about you or any of your time travel story." Patch crossed his arms and realized that Sinatra had not yet recorded the song. LaRue slowed near the circular main lobby entrance and fountain, but he rolled to a service entrance further down the building. He brought the truck between the palms and the docking bays to the right. The brakes squeaked to a stop. Then he backed up using the side mirrors into the first service bay. LaRue shifted the truck, grinding the gears. A Cuban in a brown jumpsuit and an American in an army t-shirt and fatigues moved toward the truck. LaRue leaned around to the back seat. Ride's over, boys. Get out. Patch raised his brows to Meinkewitz, and both men exited the rear doors. LaRue disappeared with a brass key he had removed from his pocket. He opened the padlock and pulled open the rear doors. Wooden storage boxes marked machinery and other boxes stenciled Schultzberger surrounded a 50-millimeter machine gun. "We're good to go," said the soldier. "Good. There's more where this came from." LaRue threw the keys to the soldier and both men got inside the laundry truck. The truck started, spewing white smoke around the bay. Then it drove from the Fontainebleau as quickly as it had come in. "Now what, Jack?" LaRue panned the trucks back into the bays. "Stay here." Spence Turtling and Zamka, his sunglasses in place, emerged from the front lobby. They were with a ski-nosed man with a dark mustache and curly, receding hair. LaRue spotted them and moved forward. They met near Three Palms along the smooth white facade. LaRue shook hands and Zamka patted him on the shoulder. The three men then walked along the building to the docks. The mustache guy slipped a wad of bills into LaRue's hand. "Ray, Patch," said Zamka. "Gentlemen, I don't think you've met Rolando Massafair, Ray." Meinkewitz shook his hand and then faced the other two men. "I understand you've gathered some significant people here at the hotel. Sinatra ain't here no more, Meinkewitz, so forget it." "That's not what he means, Jack," said Zamka. "Jack, a few people you know are out back at the pool bar, and good work. Now we know we have that access." "Delivered as promised," said the cocky but submissive LaRue. "I'll be at the bar, boys. I have to confirm this with Vegas." "At the bar and he doesn't even drink," said Zamka. "Jack should just shut his mouth." LaRue entered the hotel through the first docking bays. Zamka turned to Patch and Meinkewitz. "I just want to tell you before you go up to the suite, I don't have to stress that Johnny Rosselli, Sam Giancana, and Santo Trafficante are no-nonsense people. They want to confirm in person what you said about Carlos Sánchez." "I understand," said Patch. Zamka checked the bay where LaRue had entered. He turned toward the lobby entrance about 200 feet back. "We'll enter from the front and then go up to their suite." They quickly crossed the asphalt and entered under a small white canopy. Fresh, cold air with a hint of cinnamon circulated around the lobby. Gold chandeliers were strewn above the expansive lobby's black and white tile. The platinum-plated elevators opened as soon as they approached. As they were whisked upward, Patch whispered in Meintkewitz's ear, "This is a tricky situation, Ray." Two men in dark suits and thin ties stood on either side of a wide-open door to the top suite. The rich blue Atlantic horizon stretched across the window span. Baxter motioned Meinkewitz and Patch to stop as Morles and Massafair disappeared across the silky apricot rug. Frank Regano, in a rich blue suit, his hair slightly greased and receding, approached the suite doors. I don't believe we've met. I'm Frank Regano. I'm legal counsel for Mr. Trafficante." "Ray Meinkewitz." "Hello, Patch." He shook Regano's hand. "Good to see you again, Mr. Regano." Meintkewitz's eyes opened as Regano faced Patch. "We need your cooperation this morning here, Patch." "I'll do the best I can. Okay." A sweet, potpourri-scented room opened to a wider drawing room with a white brick fireplace. Three men stood like tripods with drinks near the slider. They sipped dark wine from huge snifters. "Our guests have arrived." The man in the turtleneck moved with his drink across the rug. He had smooth silver hair and a crooked grin as he approached. "This is Johnny Rosselli," said Regano. "Gentlemen, we have been expecting you. Please come with me." "Mr. Rosselli?" The ever-slick Rosselli shook his hand with a unique smoothness. That same odd rising smile made Patch uncomfortable. He brought Patch ahead of Meinkewitz. "Mr. Giancana and Mr. Trafficante wish to meet you both," said Rosselli. He had a charming voice and a smoothie delivery. Regano opened a black briefcase on a mahogany table as Rosselli motioned Meinkewitz and Patch toward the other two men. The little man with the pink silk tie looked as if he were the improved, well-groomed version of Jack LaRue. "You made it, Captain Kincaid. I swear if I told Jack LaRue to go get Santa Claus, he'd have him back here before Christmas. I'm Santo Trafficante." Patch squeezed the little hand and panned the spacious drawing room out to the ocean far below. Meinkewitz stood with Regano back at the table. Patch Kincaid. This is Sam Giancana. Patch, I want to personally thank you for meeting with us today. May I get you some wine? Giancana personally poured the red wine into 2 additional snifters. He handed a snifter to Meinkewitz and brought the second snifter to Patch. Patch took the rich and full wine to his lips. Very good. Regano slipped Trafficante a vinyl-covered report. Trafficante put on his black-rimmed glasses and opened the cover. We've got all the information inside on you, Patch, from the Central Intelligence Agencies and your confinement at the exile base. Then the information about Carlos Sánchez came out after they drugged you. He looked over at Giancana. We now know that he is indeed playing both sides. We all, of course, are very grateful to you for telling us about Sánchez trying to kill one or all of us, said Giancana. We want him dead, regardless of what he's been up to. He's one very clever son of a bitch, said Trafficante. He murdered a high-level security officer in Cuba in the mid-50s. Well, he deserves death, said Patch. I like you already, Patch. Rosselli, laced with a heavy cologne, put his arm around Patch. Patch rubbed his nose, afraid he would sneeze. Something wrong? Everything is just fine, Mr. Rosselli. Good. We have lost a rather substantial investment, Patch. Our financial holdings on the island of Cuba were vast. Vast, Patch. When Castro came to power, he took it all away. There was no compensation, you see. Nothing, said Trafficante from behind. Not a dime. I spent time in Castro's Trescacorna detention center. I'm never going to forgive the bastard. We will not take our chances with Sánchez. See what I mean, Patch? Giancana stepped forward. There's a widespread belief, Patch, that Cuba is a political situation, and in a sense, maybe it is. For us, it's simple. Cuba is a financial situation. We want our property back. We want to, how can I say this? We wish to push aside those responsible for taking our property. But first things first, we would all like to live. Patch savored the wine in his mouth. That's a pretty good plan. Rosselli and the others laughed. We all have the same ends as the brigade, the exiles, and the U.S. government. Listen, we know you've got every intelligence officer who's somebody is confused as hell. Word is that your story bubbled up to the administration. Like Johnny and Sam Giancana alluded to, we don't give a rat's ass about this time travel cover. You've got it in for Carlos Sánchez. Good, good. You want him dead. We want him dead. We want you working for us because nobody knows who you are. We can always use someone with no identity to help do work for us. But I really don't know where Carlos is. Rosselli produced the cockeyed smile. Meinkewitz and the intelligence boys have no idea exactly where Carlos is. We do know that he'll defect during the attack on Cuba. He has asked to defect to the United States, but he's a goddamn liar. How do you know that? Trust me, said Rosselli. Trafficante took a step toward Meinkewitz. We'll arrange with our operatives in the agency for you to be on a mission before or during the invasion. Just keep all contact between us and Attorney Regano to yourself. We will coordinate with our contacts in Cuba so you know where Carlos will be. Meinkewitz shrugged his shoulders. Be rather difficult not to tell the CIA if they start questioning us. If either of you tells what we tell you, you will both be killed within 24 hours. On the other hand, said Meinkewitz, silence is a great peacemaker. Your job will not be to kill Castro. You will kill Sánchez, so he will not be a threat to us. You will have the information you need to locate him. Why not send a professional killer in to get Carlos Sánchez, Mr. Trafficante? Rosselli patted Meinkewitz on the back. I have people on the ground, all experienced, expert marksmen, thugs, killers, will do anything for money. But he raised his index finger and slowly shook his head. None of them wants Carlos dead, nor can they be easily inserted into the operation, said Giancana. Trafficante removed his glasses. You are the man we want flown into Cuba, and we'll sell the government on the plan. Patch studied their faces. They all awaited his reaction to the proposal. We need weapons. We'll give you an additional incentive to complete this mission, Patch. Your fiancée, Kate. Kate is dead, Mr. Trafficante. No, they tricked you on the shortwave in the camp, said Giancana. Yeah, you fell for it, pal, said Rosselli. What? He asked as his breathing accelerated. How can I believe you? They didn't kill her, said Rosselli. Listen, if you take care of Carlos, we'll have Kate right here in this room waiting for you when you get back. You're lying. The right side of Rosselli's mouth curled as he eyed his friends. Johnny Rosselli says he'll produce the girl. He will produce the girl. I have no reason to say differently. I would have offered you money or something else. Kate is still here in Florida. So I go in alone. You will be flown in and you will be accompanied by 2 people, chaperone. Rosselli finished his wine. Patch, you upset the apple cart knowing about that professor defecting to the Russians. You've got some kind of connection. Your goal of killing Sanchez aligns with our goal of staying alive. And just another added thought, you pull this off and we will protect you. You will have to work for us. You will leave in coordination with the invasion, said Trafficante. Patch stared at the slick Rosselli. Listen, said Rosselli, I know they buffaloed you, but she is alive. Okay, now you're going to buffalo them. You'll be meeting with them here in Miami in the next few days. Play along with them, but remember, we want you to kill Carlos Sanchez. Mr. Rosselli, nothing would give me greater pleasure. Good man. Listen, you relax here today and for a few days, said Rosselli, putting his arm around Patch again. We'll cover it up on our end. I'm proud of you, Patch. You've got guts. You're a good American. The warm, moist air hit Patch's face as Rosselli brought him outside to the balcony. Hundreds of people below were sprawled out on loungers or swam in the blue pool under the palm trees. More were out on the white sand beach. As the ocean waves approached the beach in slow synchronization,
Chapter
he
26.
thought about Rosselli's proposed Coconut Grove, Miami, retrograde, and being ripped into the future in 1961 hung over his head. Patch spent Sunday and Monday night back at the safe house without Meinkewitz or the trumpet solo. On Sunday night, he watched Anita Bryant and Roger Williams on The Sullivan Show. He wondered if Rosselli and his friends had already talked government agents into the wild plan to fly him to Cuba.
On Tuesday morning, Dan Preslin, his breath exuding a putrid remnant of whatever he'd been drinking all night, arrived in a shiny red Chevy convertible.
Bet you wondered what we were going to do with you, Captain,
said Preslin, looking Patch over. The car reeked of cigarette smoke and bad cologne that could not mask Preslin's breath.
He looked in the rearview mirror as he pulled away from the Cuban standing on the walk. Well, you're not looking any worse for the wear.
You mean Guatemala? How about you, Dan? Rough night? Preslin flicked an ash of his cigarette out the window.
You don't take time off to enjoy yourself, you burn out. I'm not going to burn out.
When they reached the highway, Patch, despite Preslin's breath, leaned into the front seat.
What have they got planned for me?
Preslin inhaled and blew out the smoke. Oh, your situation has everyone from Robert Ashcombe on down, having apoplectic seizures. You're a VIP, Patch, said Preslin, snuffing out the cigarette in the ashtray as he accelerated down the highway. Bob Dietrich and General Ted Hillsdale are meeting us at 4 p.m.
I haven't been briefed on what they're up to.
With his hand on the wheel, Preslin turned and looked at them both.
Learn to love it, boys. The Everglades, April 4th, 1961, 3:55 p.m. Meinkewitz checked his gold Timex as Patch approached. When he saw Patch, he ran forward. Patch, did you hear? Hear what, Ray? They just fed me chicken quesadilla, beets, and carrots, and these big vanilla ice cream cones. Will you listen up, Patch? Okay, Uncle Ray, he smiled. Carlos Marcello went into the office of the Immigration Service in New Orleans like he does 3 times a month as a registered alien. So what's your big news? Oh, they cuffed him and put him into a motorcade to the Moson International Airport. Then he was stuffed into an airplane and shipped to Guatemala City, 1,200 miles away. Is that how far easterly flew us back?
Bob Dietrich stood no more than 20 feet away by a palm tree. He held a wire-rimmed notebook in his hand.
Little Kennedy was behind this. He's made one monumental mistake. I agree, said Meinkewitz.
Dietrich pointed up to the tent flap.
The general will be here very soon. Let's go inside. Who takes over from Marcello? Asked Patch. Dietrich sat down in one of the camper chairs and just looked at Patch as if his supper had just been laced with botulism. For some reason, Dietrich thought the remark humorous, and he smiled for the first time.
Last time I was in Cuba, I wasn't very clever. 59, no Batista, Havana, I was supposed to snoop. You don't ask cab drivers about how they felt about the United States attacking their island. I told them not to worry, that everything was coming to fruition. Guess what? Well, you know what happened. Batista leaving caused this whole situation, said Meinkewitz.
Dietrich wrote something in the wire-rimmed notebook.
It's government work, but too much corruption like all of Latin America. American Marines formed a ring around the tent. Patch smiled as a brown-haired man in full blue uniform entered under the flap. His little mustache moved up as he smiled at Meinkewitz. Ray, good afternoon. Glad to see you, General. General Hillsdale, this is Patch Kincaid. General. The general remained standing. Our unknown. Patch, what you and Ray will be doing is classified.
Dietrich held his pen in the air as he spoke.
As you are both aware of by now, an operation is underway for expatriated Cubans to reclaim their country from the Castro regime. I am responsible for the propaganda operations and the organization of a post-Castro government.
Dan Preston has told us you've included us in this operation.
We have a number of volunteers already on the ground, said the general, and more being dropped before we launch. We will all be looking for Castro, and we'll be looking to kill him.
Dietrich shook his head.
Our people have formulated a combination of sea and air. We're rolled back by high people in the administration. And the beachhead has been switched back to Bahia de Conchinos, the Bay of Pigs. It was a beach that came down from the jungle. A lot of mosquitoes. I'm not hopeful about this site. And one more reason to kill Castro from our resources on the ground. Whole thing sounds risky, said Meinkewitz. It's time for Kennedy to realize he has to invade Cuba and get it over with. That's neither here nor there right now. Look, I've been working with Dr. Cyril Hammerstein in my safe house, where you were, Patch, in Coconut Grove, on ways to kill Castro. That safe house had too many people just coming and going, said Hillsdale. Hell, with all the Cubans coming and going at all hours of the night, Hammerstein said he thought it was a homosexual brothel. Patch and Meinkewitz both laughed. Even the general smiled.
Dan Preston stuck his head inside as Dietrich prepared to continue. Preston looked angry and had a furious tone in his voice.
Jesus Christ, this is incredible. They're playing with fire.
What's the matter, Dan? Asked Dietrich.
Carlos Marcello.
Dietrich raised his open right hand.
We know. Little Kennedy's tried to shut them all down. Marcello's attorney said deporting Marcello was cruel and uncivilized. I guess Marcello was deprived of counsel and couldn't even talk to his wife. Little Kennedy doesn't give a shit about that. Consistent campaign to shut them all down,
said Preston.
Piss them all off is what he's done,
added Dietrich. The general looked at Preston and then back at Dietrich.
It all started with the McClellan Committee. The hearings in the Senate. They had Marcello and a lot of them right there on national TV. And we have to cooperate with those guys,
said Preston.
Why? Asked Hillsdale. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Who knows? General, said one of his aides, you have a call from Washington. Excuse me. Trafficante wants the gambling rights in Havana,
added Dietrich. Meinkewitz then banged his fist on the table. What the hell does that tell you, Bob? We shouldn't be dealing with these SOBs.
Patch formed a vivid picture of Trafficante's suite at the Fontainebleau. I don't make those decisions.
Preston crossed his arms. Hillsdale re-entered the tent as Preston lit a cigarette.
You and Patch are going to Cuba. We will land you in an appropriate area once the invasion starts. We'll have more intel as we get closer. Hillsdale stepped in front of the group. As far as this incursion to Cuba, I think we should be tight with the exiles in Cuba, the middle-class professionals who opposed Batista but came to despise Mr. Castro. For the record, I'm greatly opposed to this invasion. Maybe Kennedy will take the bait. It's not going to ferment a mass uprising against Castro. I feel the same about Vietnam. One must know his enemies. However, as a project leader, I will follow my orders. I've been informed, said Hillsdale, that Colonel Kincaid has been flown from Japan back to Washington because of this mess. His knowledge of the U-2 could be critical as we go forward.
Kurbinski, said Patch and Meinkewitz at the same time. Who's Kurbinski? Asked Dietrich. A physicist, so it's not important. Dietrich nodded and wrote in his notebook. You two will be sent back to Miami and then we'll pass the word when we're ready. Your mission is to kill Carlos Sánchez. Why do I think that certain people have a vested interest in that outcome? I'm an intelligence analyst and a physicist, not an assassin, said Meinkewitz. Ray, when the brigade breaks through and reaches Havana, we will locate Higgins. Your job will be to thoroughly debrief him if he hasn't been killed. What do you say? Meinkewitz looked directly into Patch's eyes. Well, that's different. Well, I'm not letting Patch go in alone. Hillsdale cleared his throat. The third individual will be with you for protection, and if he gets the opportunity, he will kill Castro. Dietrich smiled and tilted his head back. He and 50 others on the ground. Hotel Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, Miami, Florida, Wednesday, April 12, 1961, 2:17 p.m. This time Meinkewitz and Patch arrived at the Hotel Fontainebleau in a small black limo, driven by a quiet little man called Noogie. Noogie's answers to Meynkewitz's matter-of-fact questions on the way across town to the safe house amounted to 6 no's and 5 yeses. At the front lobby, Bill Pladen, white shirt open at the collar, wore brown pleated pants and smoked a cigarette about 25 feet inside the glass doors. When he noticed the limo stopped out front, he took 2 steps forward. Pladen, will he be coordinating sending us in? Asked Patch. Noogie opened the door. Maybe. Patch followed Meinkewitz out of the limo. Noogie said nothing and returned to the limo before the Fontainebleau doors opened. Pladen had already retreated to one of the support columns and had jettisoned the cigarette. Gentlemen, he said with a familiarity that had Patch thinking they trusted both him and Meinkewitz. Bill, you ready for Johnny? And his Kingsmen cologne? Pladen produced a hearty laugh. Oh, that stuff is brutal. Or maybe he just uses it too much, but Johnny likes it. If Johnny likes it, I like it, said Patch. Now you're learning, kid. We're heading upstairs. You'll be briefed for your mission, and you'll meet with Colonel Irwin and Rupert Montague. Are you ready? As ready as we'll ever be. We're ready. Well, my friend, tell me how the Russians know about the Cuban operation. Patch stopped and faced Pladen directly. You've had me starved, sleep-deprived, and tortured by that trumpet music at Coconut Grove. How would I know anything about the Russians? Well, there's been a breach of security as of last Sunday. If the Russians know, then Castro knows that something will happen. Meinkewitz stepped in. Bill, don't you think it's a bit far-fetched to be blaming Patch for your lack of security? Don't push me, Ray. I will push you, Bill. You people have had custody of Patch for almost a month and a half. You ought to start looking inside your own organization. Pladen said nothing as he escorted them into the elevator. The door slid open and Pladen stood back. Traitors. End up dead. Platinum doors closed and Patch turned to Meinkewitz. There are too many people running this operation, Ray. In and out of government. 2 men in smooth dark suits and thin black ties guarded the outside of the suite. The blue ocean caught his eye, but then Johnny Rosselli appeared, dressed in a navy pinstriped suit. He waited for them across the apricot wall-to-wall carpet. A wide smile enveloped his face as he extended his hand to Patch. Patch already sensed the king's men in the air. Captain, I'm so glad to see you and Ray here this morning. Then he shook hands with Meinkewitz. My hat is off to you both. What you're going to do is nothing short of extraordinary. Rosselli patted Patch on the shoulder. He motioned them to the spacious drawing room. A bald man in a gray suit and red tie smoked a cigarette near the deck sliders in front of the ocean. The third man wore an army dress uniform. He stood at ease in front of the white brick fireplace. Ray Meinkewitz and Captain Kincaid, I want you to meet Colonel Irwin and Rupert Montague. Meynkewitz's formal manner broadened on humorous. Patch said he enjoyed meeting them, but he was increasingly apprehensive about these men being in charge of his mission to Cuba. This is an interesting beginning to a military mission, said Patch. Consider it a committee of perspective, said the ever-slick Rosselli. Patch raised his brow and looked Meinkewitz in the eye. I think Joe and Sam and all of us have the same goal, but for different reasons, said Montague with a ready smile. The colonel stayed in front of the fireplace. His voice filled the room. I think what Mr. Rosselli is saying cannot be understated. I originally, on behalf of individuals in the U.S. government, contacted Mr. Rosselli for certain services. He refused any compensation. Rosselli's deadpan serious face unnerved Patch. Last month we all met here at the Fontainebleau. My assistant and I provided certain items to issue the demise of Castro. My point in bringing you up here, said the colonel, is to demonstrate the weight of political, military, and intelligence power behind the pending invasion as well as your particular operation. My only thought is to get rid of Carlos Sánchez, said Patch. Understood, said the colonel. Keep in mind, if you get the opportunity to kill Castro, you'll be saving the lives of thousands who will die as long as he is alive. Patch envisioned New York City swallowed up in the nuclear holocaust. Certainly. So, we're going in before the actual invasion of Cuba, asked Meinkewitz. Correct, said the colonel. I can't tell you exactly where this moment. We're tracking Sanchez with a number of on-the-ground contacts. As you know, he expressed an interest in defecting to the United States also last month. We're not fooled by Castro's actions. His knowledge or rumors of the invasion has prompted him to place one of his most ruthless assassins, Sanchez, in the vicinity of the landing point. All I need is an M1, said Patch. You will be fully equipped, thanks to Rube Montaigne. Patch nodded at Montaigne, who had lit another cigarette. We have others involved in this operation, backups, said Rosselli, with the goal of killing either Castro or Sanchez. We had high-level people presenting this. Buford Adams approved of this mission because we added Castro to the component. I have a dumb question. What's that? Once we accomplish this mission, how the hell do we get out of there? Rosselli did not have an answer and looked toward the colonel. The colonel stepped forward for the first time. That information will be forwarded to a member of Intercept who will accompany you to Cuba. And who might that be? Asked Patch. I can't release that name right now. He will have maps and the mission plan, as well as the means to rendezvous with the brigade once they are ashore. He will also have radio communications with our ground contacts, perhaps Sanchez himself. Sounds as if you've got this planned very well. This aspect of the invasion is planned well. I'm not so sure about the landing point and the coordination of the main thrust with the air attacks. That's right, said Meinkewitz. They did change the point of landing of this invasion. The colonel nodded. I won't say this isn't without risk. You'll be in the middle of a battle with both sides ready for victory. We understand that, said Patch. If anything happens to us, you'll have to kill Carlos. Rosselli crossed his arms. After your information, Patch, if we don't kill him, he'll get one of us for sure. You get rid of this bastard and you'll be set with us for life, believe me. Patch did not care about being all set for life. He cared about the terrorist who killed Meinkewitz in the future being stopped now. I want you to head down to the pool area. Find Jack LaRue. LaRue will pick it up from there. Patch nodded. We're good to go. Don't let me down, kid, said Rosselli, grabbing the back of his neck. And you get to reunite with your fiancée. Carlos Sánchez must die. Hotel Fontainebleau, Miami Beach, Miami, Florida, Wednesday, April 12, 1961, 4:05 p.m. Patch and Meinkewitz dodged the lounge chairs and the poolside tables along the curved blue concrete pool. At one of the sidebars, closer to the beach, Jack LaRue and a few men sat on wood bar stools. They looked up at a black and white portable TV in the upper corner shelf above the liquor bottles. President Kennedy, now engaged in yet another news conference. Patch identified even more with the younger Kennedy. LaRue held a Coke in his hand and he turned to the others. He talks a good game. He has to, said the crew-cut guy next to him. We're talking about lives on the line here, Tony. This better be handled right.
Has a decision been reached on how far this country would be willing to go in helping an anti-Castro uprising or invasion of Cuba? What could you say with respect to recent developments as far as the anti-Castro movement of Cuba is concerned?
LaRue continued his touring. Got the Ruskies putting that guy in space. Yuri Gagarin, said Patch. How do you know that, Patch? Because it already happened. Meinkewitz gave him a quizzical look as LaRue saw them at the bar. Jack? Well, look what the cat dragged in. The captain and the professor. They told us to report to you. Hush! Hush, said LaRue as he looked up again at Kennedy in his tailored suit with a white handkerchief in his suit coat pocket. Patch ordered beers for himself and Meinkewitz. Kennedy spoke with a deliberate conviction, yet always maintained his sense of humor with the press. But now he sounded serious.
Well, first I want to say that there will not be, under any conditions, be an intervention in Cuba by United States Armed Forces. And this government will do everything it possibly can, and I think it can meet its responsibilities to make sure that there are no Americans involved in any action inside Cuba. Secondly, the Justice Department's recent indictment of Mr. Masferrer in Florida on the grounds that he was plotting an invasion of Cuba from Florida in order to establish a Batista-like regime. It indicates the feelings of this country towards those who wish to reestablish that kind of administration inside Cuba.
Patch, his eyes open wide, looked back toward the hotel. He had just met Masferrer out front. Masferrer was under indictment.
Just look inside of that Camp X, right, Patchy? Patch nodded but continued to watch Kennedy.
Third, we do not intend to take any action with respect to the property or other economic interests which American citizens formerly held in Cuba, other than formal and normal negotiations with a free and independent Cuba. The basic issue in Cuba is not one between the United States and Cuba. It is between the Cubans themselves. And I intend to see that we adhere to that principle.
LaRue leaned toward Patch. I hope you heard that very well, Patchy. Don't listen to that bullshit. I've been in and out of Cuba. Castro has jets, tanks, and well-armed troops. If Kennedy doesn't go all out, that brigade is screwed, I tell you. He needs to take the play away. Patch whispered to Meinkewitz as LaRue babbled with the other men at the bar. Ray, this isn't the way history goes. Meinkewitz took a gulp of beer and furrowed his brow as he looked up.
That same question, you said that, you pointed out that this government has indicted a pro-Batista Cuban, but I'm not clear from your answer, sir, whether this government will oppose any attempt to mount an offensive against Castro from this country.
If your phrase is to mount an offensive, as I understand it, I'd be opposed to mounting an offensive.
Barred by our own Neutrality Act or by the OAS Treaty from giving any aid or arms to anti-Castro elements in this country?
Well, there are, of course, as I've stated, there is a revolutionary committee here, which is, of course, extremely anxious to see a change in government in that country. I'm sure that they're very interested in associating with all those who feel the same way. Mr. Castro enjoyed some support here in the United States and received some assistance when he was attempting to carry out his revolution. In fact, some Americans were involved in the military actions with him. That latter is what we're particularly anxious to.
Patch sipped the cold beer and continued to speak in a low voice. I hope they're not setting us up, Ray. You mean get dumped into Cuba and then there's no landing? You told me history was different, said Meinkewitz. You bet your ass it was different. Castro and Kennedy talked peace. There was no landing or invasion. This could be one big screw-up, said Meinkewitz. Yeah, with us going right into the meat grinder.
Chapter 27.
Florida Transport Warehouse, Miami, Florida, Sunday, April 16th, 1961, 9:16 p.m. Before Jack LaRue left the Fontainebleau early Saturday night, he informed Meinkewitz a transportation union official named Will Donovan would drive Patch and Meinkewitz in a black Cadillac to the loading dock south of Miami. The fat-faced Donovan had a missing tooth and a few strands of brown hair combed straight back. He did not say much during the trip under the highway lights, nor would he answer any questions. They approached a prodigious white warehouse with a constant flow of 18-wheelers to and from the numerous docking bays. Patch feared they were about to be executed when Donovan drove around the dark side of the building. Donovan stepped in front of a side dock illuminated by one street lamp. "Get out. This place is deserted," said Meinkewitz. "Why are we here?" "Look, buddy," he said, dragging a pistol from his tweed suit coat. "You just do what you're told." Meinkewitz looked at Patch and then popped the door handle. Patch followed him outside. The Cadillac tire spun quickly in the dirt along the building. The taillights brightened and it disappeared around the far corner. The dock door hummed upward before Patch could say anything.
The wavy-haired Ed Hamilton and the intense-eyed Spence Turtling were in military fatigues and held M1 Thompson.
Come this way. Patch followed Meinkewitz up the stairs. Well, where are we headed? To a little resort island in the Caribbean.
Turtling spoke first.
They stepped inside a stock area with towering stacks loaded with boxes extending into the warehouse.
Why here, Ed?
Asked Meinkewitz as they walked down one of the rows.
Turtling laughed.
You have a prime mission. Perform what you have to do for Mr. Rosselli and the others. Ship out of here in 6 hours, boys. Prepare to meet your maker. Florida Transport Warehouse, Miami, Florida, Monday, April 17th, 1961, 2:36 a.m. In the fluorescent-lit lunchroom, Patch and Meinkewitz, both in combat fatigues, drank the remainder of the bitter coffee. Backpacks stuffed with supplies and armaments lay against the wall near the doors and lockers. Patch looked up from his coffee mug. What are you going to ask Higgins? I don't know, Patch. Besides the obvious fact that he went over to the Reds, I want to know just what his proficiency is at this point. And they're going to want to know why he did it. Who contacted him, all that fine stuff. I dare say your job will be a tad more difficult. Well, I'm sure having one of the intercept soldiers along with us will help. What do you think they'll send?
I would say Bart Vanderborn. He's the most competent, or maybe his buddy Will. Hamilton stuck his head inside the doorway.
You boys outside, we're almost ready to go. Patch nodded and raised his coffee mug. To 1986. 1986, Meinkewitz answered, and they clanged the cups together. He handed Meinkewitz one of the packs and then strapped the other over his shoulders. Then they started out under the huge warehouse stacks. What I worry about, Ray, is blowing this. I have to kill Carlos Sánchez. But this whole invasion could mean one or both of us are killed. I know that. And what about Korbinski? I'm just not sure anymore. If I get retrograded back or I'm killed, you have to continue. Over a month out of Sector 13 is pushing retrograde. It's a crapshoot, Ray. A damn crapshoot. What's this? Patch gazed down the long warehouse aisle to the dock. Outside, a tiny plane painted in green and brown combat colors had landed in the long parking lot area. Harold Easterly stood with Savage by the plane. Oh, damn, somebody's idea of a bad joke. Patch nodded and stomped up to Savage. What the hell are you doing here? Savage grinned. Ready for a little trip into paradise, Kincaid? Again, what are you doing here? I'm your babysitter. Patch tightened his fist. I'm not going anywhere with you. What's the problem? Problem is that I'll kill him before we even get to Cuba, said Patch. This joker is responsible for beating the living crap out of me. Listen, Captain, this is a war. You just do your job and we'll settle the rest later.
Patch stared into Turtling's cold, unmoving eyes, and then he glared at the smirking Savage.
He's right, Patch, said Meinkewitz. The Cubans focused on Patch and he faced Savage. How do I know you know where Carlos Sánchez is? Because he's asked me to defect to the USA, Kincaid. I have the latest intel right here. I know where Sánchez will be. Now get your ass in the plane.
It's getting late,
said Easterly, looking at his watch. May God be with you,
said Turtling, and then each of the Cubans shook his hand. One of them blessed himself. I wouldn't wish that on God, said Easterly, opening the side door.
Patch climbed inside.
Sit anywhere.
Patch wiggled into a seat near the far window. He removed his pack. Meinkewitz sat in the seat next to him. One of the Cubans rushed up to the door and handed Easterly a sealed white envelope. Savage secured the outside door. He followed Easterly up front and pulled the forward vinyl curtain back in place. Why that pinhead Savage? Asked Patch. I'll shoot him myself. No, Patch, said Meinkewitz. He's nuts. We need someone who's nuts. At that moment, Savage flung the curtain back and stomped down the aisle. The plane taxied around the back of the parking lot. Buckle those belts or you'll bang the hell out of your heads. Then he sat in one of the adjacent seats, but did not bother to buckle his own belt. Having you here is like having a monkey out of the cage, said Patch. I'll overlook that pissant remark. They're paying me big money to get rid of Castro. Oh. Don't ask too many questions, Professor. You might just get answers you don't want. Who knows about this? Shut up. Savage studied a black briefing book as the plane gained speed and sped down the lot. He still had not buckled his seatbelt, even as the plane skimmed the telephone wires over the main road. Streetlights highlighted the warehouse and trucks below. He can fly out of anywhere, Ray. Over the Caribbean, Monday, April 17, 1961, 4:17 a.m. Easterly remained behind the curtain as the tiny plane moved through the air currents. In the incandescent light, Savage pointed a tiny silver flashlight at a map of Cuba in the briefing book. He dragged his index finger along the upper Cuban coast. Havana is here, on the northern part of the island. Carlos, according to intelligence sources, has been in Havana for the past month. They granted him leave and he traveled 122 miles to Buenaventura. Well, what the hell is that? Castro's trying to build his own little Coney Island or Disneyland. The whole area is filled with half-completed resorts. They can't do anything right. Carlos is on leave at this Buenaventura to party with a bunch of military personnel from Havana. Show me where we're landing, said Patch, holding the side of the book. Savage pushed his index finger along the shore to the Zapata swamp area. First we hike it, south of Cuba.Because, and then shadow the road to San Blas. We should be able to locate Sanchez easily. It says Giron? Asked Meinkewitz. Too far, Professor. Carlos will be leaving a party at Buenaventura Sunday night. There's a group of resort cottages set back from Blue Beach. On the way to the shore, we stay in the background and work our way along the Zapata swamp to the beach. How do you know all this? Shut up. As the plane buzzed along, Patch grabbed his chin. You're gonna play it straight with me, Savage. How much are they paying you? 100,000 for the prick. Patch looked over at Meinkewitz. And what about me? Where are my orders? You just report to Commander Ork, 2nd Battalion. Then you can push on to Havana. When you get to Havana, you find Higgins. And where perchance is the 2nd Battalion? Asked Patch, growing increasingly angry. You're not in charge, Kincaid, said Savage, looking up from the map. Patch grabbed Savage by the shirt. The crazy sergeant swung at him, but Patch connected several times, sending Savage to the floor. Then he held out his weapon. I'll use it. They're at Playa Largo, Red Beach. Meinkewitz studied the map. 2nd Battalion has to be 20 miles from Blue Beach. Well, that's stupid. Doesn't matter how stupid you think it is, said Savage, rubbing his chin. What's the status of this invasion now? Demanded Patch as he grabbed the map. Savage had more of an accommodating demeanor since being knocked to the floor. This is a new landing site 90 miles west of Trinidad. Beachhead's red, blue, and green beach will be defended by blocking all 3 major roads. Red Beach is at Playa Largo, said Meinkewitz, leaning over the book. Blue Beach at Playa Giron. Savage shook his head. Blue will have a trailer for the brigade headquarters. A supply depot will be set up at the resort houses where Sanchez is supposed to be after he leaves Buenaventura. And the brigade hospital will be over there. The 3rd Battalion will be at Green. Am I wrong about the 1st Battalion being dropped on the road to Grand Hagari? That road is 17 miles and 5 miles through the Zapata swamp. They'll be dropped at the Playa Giron Road to San Blas where the road forks. Right where we're being unloaded. 17 miles, 5 miles through the damn Zapata swamp. Come on, Savage. What's to prevent our own guys from killing us? We're landing south of Cuba.Because. We won't be on that main road to Blue Beach. Patch just shook his head. I wish I had some input in this. And what would you do different, Hotshot? Parachute in with them? You're going after Sanchez. This is a classified mission. We're heading with Meinkewitz to Playa Largo after we start advancing to Havana. That's 120 goddamn miles, said Meinkewitz. What else? Asked Patch as he sat back in the seat. There's boats in the harbors. We have 2 M41 tanks, 75mm rifles, mortars, and B-26 with phony Cuban markings that will stop any Castro advance. There'll be non-U.S. airstrikes this morning and on day 2. Let's not worry about all that. We take out Sanchez, then we head to Commander Orker at Playa Largo. Patch hit Savage's arm. How do you know where Castro is? Savage had a rehearsed answer. Classified. Easterly called from the cabin. Savage stood and started up front but turned back, blocking the overhead light. He steadied himself on the seat backs until he reached the curtain and disappeared. What do you think, Ray? I think they're invading Cuba and we're caught in the middle of the whole damn thing. Patch closed his eyes as he spoke. Everything is hanging in the balance here. All my responsibility. An invasion shouldn't have happened. He felt Meynkewitz's hand on his wrist and he opened his eyes. Our responsibility. Patch closed his eyes and the hum of the engines almost put him to sleep. When he opened his eyes, Savage emerged from behind the curtain and looked confused. Your girlfriend, Kincaid. Patch leaped from the seat. What happened? Rosselli. He must have been drunk. Patch held Savage's wide shoulders. Tell me what happened. They brought her to the Hotel Fontainebleau. Same place they brought you. The Trafficanti suite. No, this is crazy. Meinkewitz also stood. Try us. They left her in the front room. The busboy was there. He said she became white, glowing, and then her image began shrinking. The image reddened and then shrunk away. This is stupid. A put-on. Rosselli is trying to make me think this. Point is that she's gone. Pat shook his head and fell back in the seat. Retrograde, whispered Meinkewitz in his ear. Savage mumbled something about calling Rosselli, then he disappeared behind the curtain. Patch gripped the armrest. Meinkewitz leaned over. Patch, how many minutes had elapsed before you got back to the chamber? What do you mean, Ray? I'm trying to find a way to determine the difference between the time she left and the time you left. If you're trying to predict retrograde, then forget it. The chamber was in the midst of a power-up, and I don't know exactly when Kate came back. And you'll never know when you'll be pulled back. Now she's in the future, Ray. Through the engine's drone, Patch looked at his own dim image in the dark window. A few stars shone through the cabin light. His thick hair and tanned face hardly reflected his inner turmoil. He worried about Kate as he turned back to Meinkewitz. Retrograde is like dying. You just never know. Chapter 28. Over the Cuban north coast, Monday, April 17, 1961, 4:35 a.m. The small plane's engine grinded in the brightening sky under lofty gray dab clouds and traced a course over the convoluted, rugged green felt mountains. These are the Escambray Mountains, perfect hiding place if the operation gets messed up. This is the Bahia de Conchinos. It makes me nervous. Patch remained absorbed with Kate's retrograde as the plane banked over a huge water inlet indistinct in the pre-dawn glow. Cienfuegos, said Savage over the engine clatter as he checked the map. He placed the binoculars over his eyes. Ah, the ships are in place. The resourceful easterly then followed the straight railroad track lines inland. The grassy swamp, sandwiched between the shore and the darkened inland, loomed like a mysterious gray behemoth. The city near the beach glowed with an array of bright lights. What's with the lights? Giron, Blue Beach area. The outline of ships anchored in the bay offshore became clearer in the pre-dawn light. Others floated silently along the elongated Bay of Pigs. The plane banked over the Zapata swamp. Okay, ya agarramos. Covadonga ahead, right on target. 80 degrees, 12 minutes north, replied easterly. 80 degrees, 15 west. 41-foot elevation, gentlemen. We're going in. Where? Into that swamp? Savage's annoying sandpaper laugh preceded his response. Ha! We'll see if the crocodiles are biting this morning, Professor. Once they passed over the swampy inlets, grasslands, and bush, the plane dipped and came in even lower. They swept across the scattered treetops. Patch wondered how easterly would clear the trees and maneuver into a solid open area. There's nowhere to land. Easterly looked over his shoulder. Now set her down before Castro sends out those sea furies, said Savage. John Rosselli is paying you for this, so you shut your mouth. Meinkewitz smiled as Patch looked out the window. Clearing no more than a few hundred feet wide with a small marshy lake on the north side came into view just ahead. The plane pitched and yawed and the engines cut back as they cleared the scrubby trees. The grass and soil blurred as they flew just above a darkened swatch of swamp water. The wheels hit the spongy ground. The plane bounced up and then quickly returned to earth. Patch's seatbelt tightened as the plane slid sideways and careened toward a bushy edge of the swamp. Easterly gained control of the plane and steered it in a huge semicircle within a few feet of the foliage. Meinkewitz pretended to pray as they came to an abrupt stop near the wooded scrub. Savage stood near the door with his pack fully in place. "What now, Savage? Get your asses in gear!" Savage popped the door and leaped outside. "I hate that son of a bitch," said Patch. "Well, join the club," said Meinkewitz as he hoisted on his pack. Patch pulled the strap over Meynkewitz's shoulder. Then he swung up his own pack, grabbed his rifle, and called out to Easterly, "Hey, Harold, you're the best." Easterly, still in the pilot's seat, adjusted his white cap and nodded.
I know that. You guys give him hell.
Patch followed Meinkewitz to the opening. He put his hand on Meynkewitz's shoulder and jumped onto the grass. Meinkewitz backed outside and Patch grabbed him around the waist. He swung his friend to the ground and slid his rifle out of the plane. Savage stood in his green fatigues in front of the bushes. He panned the binoculars across the grassland and trees. The plane's engines never stopped. Easterly looped in a small circle and occasionally skidded on the grass. A smattering of green and brown paint on the plane's surface blended in with the terrain as he raced forward. He gained altitude sharply at the trees and lifted into the brightening sky. A warm quiescence slowly replaced the whining engine. Savage marched across the field and threw down his pack and pulled out the map. 1,400 Cubans are being brought in on those transport ships. This is the first step, gentlemen, in eliminating Castro. The Central Australia sugar mill on the road to Playa Lago is where they'll need to go once we advance. I'm going to be the son of a bitch who killed Castro. I agree with half of that statement, said Meinkewitz, and Patch laughed. What's so damn funny, Kincaid? You're about to go into combat. So he moved through this grassy area toward Blue Beach, asked Patch, still grinning. You make it sound like it's around the next bend. We're talking over 20 miles. We head west and shadow the Sand Blaze Road to stay clear of our own paratroopers. Patch stepped forward. I'll let them know not to shoot you. You better watch your backside, Tenderfoot. Patch smiled as he raised the binoculars and panned the opening. He spotted a few birds and an owl in one of the trees. As he packed the binoculars away, he noticed a walkie-talkie clipped to Savage's belt. Savage also pulled something out of his playbook. Meinkewitz looked over his shoulders. Is this Carlos Sánchez? Patch swatted away one of the annoying mosquitoes. He studied a folded, glossy picture of Carlos Sánchez at a Castro rally, probably in Havana. Carlos's short, dark haircut and slimmer build contrasted with the puffy-faced man with the peppered hair back at Sector 13. The pug nose and surly grin had not changed. You contacted him by radio? Negative, trust me. He's coming down from the Bonaventura resort. When will he head out? Asked Meinkewitz. You let me handle this, said Savage, looking into the bush and then at his oversized military watch. We have to move our collective asses, gentlemen. He thinks he's going to defect, correct? Asked Patch. Savage twisted in the grass. Then you get your big chance, Kincaid. He again turned toward the bushes. Hey, Savage, said Patch as they started across the gnarly branches. What is it? He asked as he kept moving. Watch your backside. Zapata Swamp, 6:30 a.m., Monday, April 17, 1961. Half an hour ago, a C-46 had roared across the bay. A cluster of puffy, shadowy parachutes floated downward to a point Savage estimated to be near the Sand Blaze Road junction. In the open grass, Patch heard more aircraft. A huge B-26, combat-colored and propeller-driven, started a long swoop from the north. Savage's walkie-talkie crackled and muffled explosions and small arms fire in the distance kept him pacing like a nervous chicken in the barnyard. This is Checkpoint 7, B-26 spotted north of Sand Blaze, Cuban flag on wings. We'd best get back into the bush, said Patch. Come on, Ray. Checkpoint 7, can you hear me? Patch leaped over a fallen log. He and Meinkewitz continued a few feet inside the foliage. For several minutes they trekked along the grass and mushy ground. Savage finally approached from behind and shouted something into the walkie-talkie. A few minutes later, with the radio in his hand, he sprinted across the grass. Machine gun fire erupted over the ocean to the south. Savage's mouth hung open as he stared. We're moving out. Brilliant, said Patch, shaking his head. Was that a Cuban or an American plane? Asked Meinkewitz. Savage slapped a mosquito on his neck. What do you think I am, a hawk? It was a Cuban plane, said Patch. I saw the flag on the wings. Like you know, Kincaid? Savage leaped quickly like a kangaroo through the bush. They followed him south for a few minutes. Then his walkie-talkie sounded. Savage held out the radio. Jesus Christ. Patch skipped over a small inlet stream. What is it now? They're firing on our small harbor boats, the bastards. Patch closed his eyes. We are invading their island. You need to tell me what time that we're supposed to link up with Carlos Sánchez. I can't do that yet. I have my orders. You're a pain in the ass, you know that? I'll take care of you later, Kincaid. Go right ahead. Across the grass to the west, the bulky B-26 looped over the swamp several times. A trail of dark smoke spewed behind the plane as it veered northward toward the ground. A second later, it vanished over the treetops miles away. A flash and ensuing fireball headed upward. The rumble shook the swamp. We got him, said Meinkewitz. Yeah, said Savage, stomping back into the high grass. Patch made a sour face at Savage. He listened as he thought he heard jets, but he couldn't see them. He removed his field glasses and immediately caught sight of a C-46 transport's propellers. In some type of signal or gesture, the plane dipped, but more machine gun fire echoed back through the swamp as Savage started southing. Patch and Meinkewitz high-stepped through the brush behind him. Savage quickly established a fast pace as he exited onto the grass. Patch looked north over his shoulder. They were halfway across the bristly brown swamp grass when the sound of more jets from the north boomed louder. A small blue and green plane skimmed the treetops and trailed another B-26 above the beach. Patch and Meinkewitz both dove onto the grass, but Savage nonchalantly stepped through the swamp grass and spoke into the walkie-talkie. He's gonna get himself killed, said Meinkewitz. C'est la vie. When the planes flew farther away, Patch and Meinkewitz jogged toward Savage, 75 yards ahead of them. Are you crazy? Asked Patch as he caught up with the sergeant. Cuban sea furry. They can do as much damage as the bigger planes, said Savage as he marched ahead. Patch heard more jets and swung his binoculars into the morning sky. Two jets approached the bay at a high altitude. A muffled explosion shook the ground. Savage plodded about 100 feet ahead. He turned as Meinkewitz and Patch leaped over the fallen trees. The Houston has a friggin' hole in its stern and has run aground. Let's just get down to Blue Beach, said Meinkewitz. Between the static, somebody reported that the machine gun fire had hit another ship. They hit the Barbara J, too. They're encountering the enemy up at Playa Largo. Well, we're in the other direction from Playa Largo, said Patch. Savage marched 10 feet ahead in the shade. Getting nervous, Kincaid? Or are you just plain scared? No, I'm getting an itchy trigger finger. Savage's hand slowly slid up his own weapon. Patch looked at Meinkewitz, and Meinkewitz, now donning an olive baseball cap, grinned. You never know when you're going to have to shoot.
Chapter 29.
Zapata Swamp, east of San Blas, Monday, April 17th, 1961, 7:03 a.m. Savage adjusted his pack and pushed his way out of the bushes again. Troops lingered on the road across the swamp. Patch turned quickly. Paratroopers are on the road. I'm aware of that, Kincaid. We're losing time. Patch shook his head as Savage sprinted. Meinkewitz increased his pace. Follow him, Patch. Pray he knows what he's doing. Patch's thoughts centered on Kate. She had left 1961, but where in the future had she landed? How much had his actions affected that future? He lifted his feet over the high grass as the gunfire continued further west. Savage suddenly darted to the left, toward a couple of tall palms and more bush. Patch slowed for Meinkewitz, who waved him forward, but he waited and jogged next to his friend. They hiked diagonally away from the road. Savage waited for them at the clearing's edge. Take some water, we're getting closer. What about Carlos? Asked Patch, and he poured the warm canteen water into his dry throat. Savage squinted and bit his lower lip. Not yet. He snapped his helmet in place and pushed the bush branches back. Meinkewitz wiped his mouth and screwed the top back on his canteen. Say, he's a nice guy. Yeah, right, just like El Barbudo. Who's that? Castro or Blackbeard the pirate, take your choice. Bypass Road, Zapata Swamp, Monday, April 17, 1961, 9:30 a.m. Patch tracked the high-flying Sea Fury with the binoculars until he lost the plane beyond the trees. A blast that prompted all three men to dive into the brush preceded several minuscule explosions. Patch held his helmet and looked south. A small fireball reminiscent of the nuclear explosion over New York in 1986 ascended into the sky. Somebody shouted something about an atomic bomb into Savage's radio channel. A-bomb? Savage stood. My guess is they got another ship. When you call Carlos? He smiled and kept the smile on his face as he looked south toward a looping east-west road. You'll know, Kincaid, because I can call him with the code words, which are, up here, he said, pointing at his helmet. Lots of space up there. I'll overlook that, Professor. You can hold Kincaid's hand crossing the bypass road. He stared at them for a few seconds, his arm and eyes glistening in the morning light. Then he broke into a sprint like an end in football, running a pattern across the narrow road. Meinkewitz and Patch kept a 50-foot distance just in case the Cubans gunned down Savage. A few minutes later, Savage slowed and yelled back, "The Rio Escondido is gone!" A steady smoke stream billowed into the morning sky above the trees. Patch sensed they were near the bay. Savage jogged to the west, almost in the direction of the smoke. At a clump of tall bushes, he raised his watch upward, shook off a mosquito, and grabbed the radio. El Beso de la Muerte. Meinkewitz tightened his brow. Patch. The kiss of death. Very good, Professor. El Beso de la Muerte. The radio hissed and Savage checked his watch. What's the matter, Savage? Nobody home? Asked Patch. Savage started forward again. You better hope he's home and he doesn't take us all out. Listen, there's frogmen on Blue Beach as well as the 6th Battalion. They know about this mission? Patch yelled. Savage did not answer as he ran. Patch waited for Meinkewitz to finish another gulp of water. Those planes came in straight, Ray, from the northeast. Easterly would be the first to tell you when they come in straight like that, it gives whoever was on the ground time to prepare. Apparently not enough time for the Rio Escondido. Savage appeared a few hundred yards through the bushes. Patch guided Meinkewitz after the crazy sergeant. Through the trees and houses, the heightened blue bay eventually materialized. Savage, his foot up on a fence post, barked into the radio as they approached. The static popped across the open channel. El Beso de la Muerte. Are you sure he's going to be here? Carlos Sanchez's voice mixed with the static. El Beso de la Muerte. Patch's guts swirled with adrenaline. Esto es Elvis, said Savage. Oh, for the love of Mike, said Meinkewitz as he turned. Carlos chuckled. Estás listo para ir al destilado? In order to kill Rosselli and the others in the future, Carlos now performed this defecting charade. Okay, rendezvous at Disneyland. Despite his strong accent, he knew English. Sure, we'll climb the Matterhorn. On my way. Savage faced Patch and Meinkewitz. Blue Beach was taken by the 6th and 4th Battalions. They know nothing of this mission, gentlemen. We'll have to be quick and then move out. Hundreds of men in combat fatigues and caps scurried beyond the beach cabins. Jeeps, trucks, and a tank were visible to the west. Smoke from the Rio flared into the sky down to the bay. 4 other ships remained in the harbor. Patch's heart pounded and his hands were clammy around the M1. Savage handed the radio and his pack to Patch. I'm walking down to the 3rd Resort Cottage. No doubt this son of a bitch will have a backup. I don't think he's so brazen to go it alone. Then we head back to the swamp and not get involved with this operation at all. When we meet my contact in Playa Largo, we'll get the professor to command to Orca for his little vacation to Havana. What about you? Asked Patch. I'm off to find me 100,000 for Fidel. He tiptoed through the brush. Don't miss the leopard, Kincaid. They shadowed Savage from the west. Carlos Sánchez, the international terrorist from 1986, lurked along the nearby shore. Patch's stomach knotted as he repeatedly took deep breaths, but gained confidence marching beside Meinkewitz. In a few minutes, fate would take its inevitable course and test Krupinski's precise hypothesis. Everyone listening to the Fitton on the Air podcast has not heard me talk about the rogue Sergeant Savage. Patch has taken Savage down twice, yet Savage walks around arrogantly. And now, on the ground in Cuba, in the middle of the Bay of Pigs invasion, Patch and Ray Meinkewitz rely on Savage to rendezvous with Carlos Sánchez. With bombs exploding and distant guns pounding in the morning air, jet and cargo planes buzz overhead. Savage closes in on El Leopardo, Sánchez. Patch knows the future is on the line. Carlos Sánchez must die. An important episode is coming up next week.
You will be here. Achtung! That is an order. Auf Wiedersehen!
All of my books are available in paperback, Kindle, and audio at www.fittonbooks.com, or you can look at the list of audiobooks separately at pizzazz-pizzazz.com.